She stood at the wash basin, hands submerged in tepid water, eyes fixed blankly on the faint reflection shimmering back. Outside, dawn stretched lazily across the desert, creeping softly through the window pane to rest on her knuckles, reddened from work she never imagined doing. Her fingers brushed a tiny scar half hidden beneath the soap, a quiet memory of who she'd once been. Nearby, soft breathing filled the silence, small, rhythmic, innocent. Her heartbeat quickened, but she did not turn. Instead, she savored the ache in her chest, the pull of an instinct she'd long buried. The room held its breath, time pausing to watch this woman linger between regret and resolve, knowing only she could choose which to carry forward. She closed her eyes, releasing a single breath she'd held too long, and allowed herself this fragile moment of peace, uncertain how long it would last. A low whistle broke the hush inside the third-class carriage. Passengers stirred in the thick, warm air. Someone coughed into a handkerchief. Another shifted a suitcase. Annalise Wynne kept her eyes on the dusty window. Her throat felt raw from sleeplessness, and the stale smell of overheated iron and leather seats clung to her clothes. For the 100th time, Annalise unfolded the letter in her lap. She had read it so often the edges had begun to fray. Even the ink had begun to fade. The lower right corner bore a water stain where tears or desert rain had smudged the last words, "I never meant to deceive you." Deceive her, how the letter stopped abruptly, ending on that unsettling confession. For 3 years she had exchanged letters with Augustus Ward, or so he had signed. He wrote of farmland and orchard soil, not the parched deserts that flew past the train window. He offered honesty, or so she believed, and he invited her here to a future, a home, a promise of work and respect, perhaps marriage too. Yet that final letter arrived months late, and it spoke only of regret. No explanation, no closure. Annalise's reflection in the glass revealed tired eyes framed by strands of hair, escaping her modest bun. She was just 24, but the lines of worry along her brow made her look older. Boston had taught her many survival skills. Keep your head down, keep your hands busy, keep a lock on your heart. But it had not taught her how to respond to a broken promise in a place so far from everything familiar. The train lurched to a stop. Through the window, Annalise saw a weathered sign that read, "Silverthorne Station." She swallowed a dryness in her mouth. This was the place, though it hardly resembled the orchard Augustus had described. Instead, dust devils flickered across barren land. A single platform extended from a squat wooden building. Beyond that emptiness, she adjusted her straw hat, rose to her feet, and smoothed her travel-worn dress. Then she remembered there was no real need for tidiness. Augustus Ward was not here to greet her. He had died, or so the telegram said. Died in a horse-riding accident 6 months ago. That was the reason given, along with the name Jeremiah Ward, Augustus's older brother. The telegram said Jeremiah would explain everything once she arrived. She stepped onto the platform, the sun's heat hitting like a wall. She shielded her eyes with one gloved hand, scanning for a figure who might be waiting. No one approached. She inhaled slowly, dust clinging to the back of her throat. A station clerk hurried by carrying a crate marked "Supply." Annalise grabbed her valise, moved aside to let him pass. The swirl of desert wind nearly tugged her battered letter away. She clutched it. Then she saw him. A man past 50, broad-shouldered but slightly stooped, leaning against a wooden pillar. He wore a coat too heavy for the heat, and his hair, once dark, was streaked heavily with silver. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed most of his face, but she noticed the faint lines of concern around his mouth. "Miss Wynne." His voice was low. He peeled off his hat, revealing a damp brow. "I'm Jeremiah Ward. Gus Augustus. The man's voice faltered, as if he still wrestled with the memory. Annalise nodded, a prickle of sympathy stirring. "I received the telegram. I'm sorry for your loss." Jeremiah exhaled a moment before gesturing to her luggage. "I can take you where he lived if you want to see it. The ranch is a ride west from here." She forced a small smile that wobbled. "Yes, please." Her plan had been simple. If Augustus was gone, she would gather her thoughts and decide whether to go home or find work in the territory. She would not cling to illusions, but she also felt a curious need for answers. What exactly had Augustus meant by, "I never meant to deceive you"? As Jeremiah led her to a dusty buckboard wagon, she managed to whisper, "He never said anything about dying in his letters." Immediately she felt foolish. Of course he wouldn't have mentioned it. Death rarely announces itself. Jeremiah's gaze flicked to her. He didn't have time. The accident was sudden. Then he set his hat back on turning away. She sensed he was not just grieving, but guarded. The wagon rattled onto a dirt road, the sun dropping low. In the darkening sky, the desert stretched wide. Annalise felt the emptiness settle in her stomach. Augustus was gone, yet she was here. She set the letter on her lap, and the final words stared back at her, ghostly in the fading light. They approached the ranch by twilight. A wooden archway bore a faded branding insignia, Red Moon Ranch. The wagon lurched through a half-broken gate. Several outbuildings slumped in disrepair, and a few horses dozed in corrals. Everything wore a hush, as though the place itself was in mourning. Jeremiah stopped near a small house with peeling paint. "You can stay here tonight. We'll figure out your next step tomorrow." "Not sure if Gus left any instructions for you." His voice trailed off, and Annalise caught the flicker of guilt or tension in his eyes. She recalled the telegram's promise that Jeremiah Ward would explain everything. But so far he had offered precious few details. She glanced at the house, the porch half buried in wind-blown sand. A lonely lantern glowed in the window, no other light stirring. "Mr. Ward," she began, but he had already descended from the wagon crossing to the porch to open the door. "I thank you." He nodded, a movement heavy with fatigue. "There's water in the kitchen. I can bring your trunk in." He paused. "I'm sorry there's nobody else here to greet you. We're running short on ranch hands. Times are rough." She wondered if it was always so quiet, or if the ranch had died along with Augustus. She stepped inside. The air was stuffy with disuse. A single oil lamp on a table cast jittery shadows. Jeremiah set her small trunk on the floor, dusted his hands on his trousers. She found her voice again. "If Augustus wrote you, anything about me perhaps that I'd come," or Jeremiah's mouth tightened. "He mentioned you, but not everything." He let out a controlled sigh. "I'm heading back to my place on the far side of the property. We can talk in the morning." His eyes flicked to the letter in her hand. "Hold on to that." Then he was gone, his boots echoing on the porch. The hush descended again. Alone in this strange house, Annalise closed the door, heart pounding. She tried lighting another lamp and discovered half-empty matches on the mantel. The light revealed a modest living area, a worn sofa, shelves with books whose spines had begun to warp from dryness, and a small wooden desk. She caught her reflection in the desk mirror. A stranger stared back, her brown hair straggled loose in the evening gloom. Next to the mirror lay an old blanket folded neatly in a glass paperweight. She picked it up, dust swirling in the lamplight. A swirl of color inside the glass formed a shape almost like a rising moon. She wondered if it was important or just a trinket. Fatigue washed over her. The day's confusion weighed heavier than her trunk. She needed sleep, though she feared nightmares of empty train stations and half-said confessions. Mustering her last bit of energy, she found a small bedroom with a single bed. The sheets, though clean, smelled of the desert. She closed the door, changed into her nightclothes, and finally let the darkness claim her. Somewhere past midnight, Annalise stirred awake. She thought she heard footsteps. Heart pounding, she sat up, eyes straining. Faint starlight slipped under the window's crooked blind. Again, soft, dragging steps across floorboards. Her breath caught in her throat. She slowly slid out of bed, pulling a robe around her shoulders. Every nerve screamed caution, but something compelled her to see if it was just Jeremiah or an animal creeping inside. She opened the bedroom door, the hallway dark as ink. No movement. She took a trembling step forward, then another. The living area was empty. She reached for the lamp, hand shaking. With a spark of the match yellow glow filled the room. Nothing. The door was locked from the inside, she confirmed that. Yet she felt an unmistakable sense that someone had been here. A cold sweat blossomed at the back of her neck. Her eyes landed on the desk. The top drawer was slightly ajar, though she remembered it shut. She inched over, pulled it open. Yellowing scraps of paper, random bits of string, and an old envelope stuffed with receipts or letters. She recognized the handwriting from Augustus's letters. Could this be more of his writing? She reached inside, gingerly lifting the envelope. It contained 2 folded pages, but she only managed to read a line or two before a wave of guilt and curiosity collided inside her. One line read, "I can't keep wearing another man's name." and the next line was half scribbled out. Deceit. Another man's name. She slammed the drawer shut as though the letter had burned her fingertips. No. She couldn't unravel this in the middle of the night. Her mind was exhausted, prone to illusions. Perhaps the footsteps had been the old house settling. Perhaps some stray cat had crept under the foundation. She retreated to her bedroom. Slumber did not come easily, and when it did, it was filled with shadows shaped like lost faces. Dawn brought pale gold light through the window. Annalise woke with a stiff neck, eyes gritty from disturbed rest. She forced herself up, changed into a simple day dress, and combed her hair. She glanced once more at the desk from last night's incident. Curiosity tugged at her, but a pang of caution reminded her that rummaging through another's private letters was not how she wanted to begin this. She opened the front door onto a world of dusty yard, a few chickens wandering aimlessly, and a withered vegetable patch near the side of the house. The sky spread wide, tinted pink. The air was crisp, cooler than expected. She inhaled, catching a faint whiff of wood smoke. Jeremiah was already there, seated on the porch steps, balancing a tin mug on his knee. He looked up as she stepped out, lines of worry still etched on his brow. "Hope you slept," he said quietly. She managed a nod, though it wasn't entirely true. I did for the most part." She hesitated, recalling the half-open drawer. "Mr. Ward, I would like to know what Augustus told you about me and about any arrangement we had. I was led to believe I might come here to help with farm tasks, maybe keep accounts. Then I received news of his death. But there's something missing, isn't there?" Jeremiah took a slow sip. "He told me he'd invited you, that you had some skills that might help on the ranch. He didn't say much else. Maybe he planned to tell you everything in person." He avoided her gaze as if he carried secrets too large to speak. She pressed gently. "And this ranch, did Augustus run it, or did you?" A muscle in Jeremiah's jaw twitched. "We both did in theory, but the truth is I was away for a while." He set the mug down with a hollow clang. "Came back after the war. Gus was younger. He tried to keep it afloat." The war. She felt a pang. Her father had died in that war, an ill-fated soldier. So many men returned half-broken. She glanced again at the cracked yard, the sagging fences. Maybe Gus had been in over his head, which explained the orchard allusions in his letters. Annalise tried to keep her voice level. "Do you have any idea what he meant by deceiving me? That's what his last letter said." Jeremiah's eyes clouded. "I can't speak for him, Miss Wynne." He stood dusting off his pants. But I can't let you wander off with no place to go. If you'd stay for a while, 3 months, say, I'd appreciate the help. And maybe it's what Gus would have wanted. Then if you choose to head back east, I'll find some wages to send you properly." A faint, apologetic shrug. "This place, as you see, is nearly gone. If it's not too battered for you, I'd be grateful." She could almost hear an unspoken weight behind his words. "Please, I owe it to him, to you." Her heart twisted. This place felt haunted, yet it tugged at her sense of compassion. If she left, she would never learn the truth. If she stayed, she would bury herself deeper in secrets. But she had nowhere else and no illusions that Boston would welcome her back with open arms. She nodded. "All right, I'll stay." Jeremiah offered something like a half-smile. "Thank you. I'll show you around." The day was spent in a quiet flurry of chores. Jeremiah pointed out the stable, the half-collapsed barn, and the meager cluster of sheep that needed daily feeding. Annalise tidied the kitchen, wincing at how the cupboards were nearly bare. She found it surprising that no ranch hands lingered. He admitted that months of back wages had driven the few workers away. He himself had been scraping by, trying to keep at least a skeleton crew for the horse corral. But even that was precarious. Late afternoon, she ventured beyond the yard to see if a garden could be revived. She spotted a small figure kneeling in the dust behind a shed. At first, she thought it was a stray child from a neighbor's farm, then realized the nearest neighbors were miles away. She approached slowly. It was a girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, wearing a faded dress that might once have been pink. She was drawing lines in the dirt with a stick humming off-key. Her hair was pinned back in messy braids. As Annalise got closer, the girl heard footsteps and froze, eyes darting up. Her expression was a mix of fear and curiosity. Annalise offered her gentlest smile. "Hello there," she said softly, mindful of how easily children spook around strangers. The girl didn't respond verbally. She pressed her lips together, hugging the stick to her chest. I'm Annalise. I just arrived. She crouched, ignoring the protest of tired legs to see the lines the child had been drawing. They formed some pattern reminiscent of a tree or perhaps a woman's silhouette. That's a nice drawing. Do you like to draw? Still the child said nothing. Her big dark eyes flicked over Annalise's face, then back to the swirl of lines in the dirt. She made a motion as if to speak, but no words came out. Just then, Jeremiah's voice called from behind the shed. You found her. He rounded the corner, saw the two of them. A flicker of discomfort crossed his features. This is Hattie. She doesn't talk, at least not in a while. Well, let's say she ended up here after her father left. Annalise looked at him, baffled. She lives here alone. Jeremiah sighed, rubbed the back of his neck. I let her stay in the old bunkhouse with an older caretaker, Wardell, who used to look after the horses. But he's gone more often now. We all do what we can. A surge of sympathy filled Annalise. This child was silent, alone, and drawing in the dirt behind a neglected ranch. Something about her reminded Annalise of her own younger self, lost after her father's death. She offered her hand. Hattie, would you like to come help me see what we can do about a garden? Hattie stared. Then shyly, she set her stick on the ground and put her small hand into Annalise's. The contact was electrifying in its simplicity. Annalise realized with a pang she had hardly touched or been touched kindly by anyone since her mother died years ago. Jeremiah exhaled relief mixed with something else, a guarded sadness. You've got a way with people, Miss Wynne. Then he took a step back. I'll leave you two to it. Just be careful. Hattie startles easily if there's loud noise or sudden movement. Annalise nodded. She understood that. War or trauma had left many children like that. The world was not always gentle, especially in these frontier lands. She's standing in the living area at twilight. A lamp flickers. The desk drawer is open again, and she's holding a letter. Only this time she can read it clearly. I wasn't born Augustus Ward. The name belongs to a man who never came home from the war. I took it out of desperation. A breath catches in her throat. She feels the house tilt, footsteps behind her. Someone calls her name, Annalise, Annalise. She jerks awake, still in the garden, the sun setting. Hattie is gently tugging her sleeve. You fell asleep, the child's eyes say. Annalise's heart pounds. The letter, the false name, could it be real? She rubs her forehead. Sorry, dear. Must have drifted. But the sense of dread lingers. That evening, after she settles Hattie in the bunkhouse with a small bowl of leftover stew, Annalise wanders the ranch yard. The sky has turned to smoky purple stars just beginning to glimmer. Crickets set up a hesitant chorus. She spots Jeremiah leaning by the fence near the corral, arms folded, gazing at the horizon. He seems lost in memory. Approaching, she keeps a respectful distance. Mr. Ward, she says softly, thank you for letting me stay. He doesn't turn right away. Finally, he speaks. Call me Jeremiah. Formalities out here just make it lonelier. Then he glances at her. You've been kind to Hattie. She's a sweet child, Annalise murmurs. But she seems fearful. He nods. Her father was well, it doesn't matter now. He left her. She hardly speaks, only draws. Gus tried to get her to talk, but it never took. Something in his tone makes her wonder if more secrets coil around Hattie. But she's too unsure to push further. Instead, she softly asks, do you know if Augustus left behind personal letters or diaries? I found something that suggests he might have withheld the truth about who he was. Jeremiah stiffened slightly. He was my brother. I know him. He did what he thought right, but the war changed him. He exhales as though a weight is pressing on his chest. Why do you ask? She contemplates whether to mention the desk drawer, the letter about another man's name. Something in her bristles at the deception, but she is not certain Jeremiah can be trusted fully either. So she says only, I suspect he felt guilty about something. Jeremiah dips his head. He served in a volunteer regiment, ended up in skirmishes where men deserted. Some deserted to keep living, I guess. Don't judge him too harshly. She wants to say, I'm not judging. Instead, she stands silent, feeling the desert breeze brush her hair. Then in that hush, Jeremiah unclasped something from around his neck, a rusted chain with a small silver locket. He regards it for a moment before pressing it into her hand. I found it among Gus's things after... He clears his throat. Look inside if you like. Might tell you more than I can. Then he turns and walks away, shoulders bowed under the weight of memory. Annalise stands alone by the fence, the locket in her palm, heavy with the promise of secrets. The corral gate creaks in the wind. She flicks open the locket's tiny clasp. Inside a miniature daguerreotype image of two men in uniform, one face blurred by time, the other someone she can't quite make out. No inscription, no name, just ghosts captured in metal. Her chest tightens. She wonders if the second man is Jeremiah or some other soldier. Or the real Augustus whose name was stolen. She closes the locket gently, heart thrumming with fear. The desert stars above glimmer distant and cold. Some truce she senses will not be kind. Switching to a quiet internal perspective from Hattie, though, in third person, limited, to reflect the user's request for different focuses. Hattie kneels on the bunkhouse floor, an oil lamp sputtering. Wardell sleeps in a corner bed snoring. She knows he'll be cross if she makes noise. So she carefully opens her small tin box. Inside are her treasures, bits of colored thread, a scrap of bright ribbon from the old orchard storage, and a chipped cameo brooch depicting a woman's silhouette. She doesn't know the woman in the cameo. Sometimes she imagines it was her mother, or maybe a fancy lady who lived in a city like Boston. Hattie tries to picture that lady's voice. Would it be warm or sing lullabies? Her own voice is locked inside her. She can't push out the words. It's safer that way, for reasons she can't fully remember, only feel. Today a new woman came, Annalise. She is gentle, not loud. She doesn't force Hattie to speak, doesn't yank her arm. She smells of soap and her eyes look sad. Hattie draws pictures to make sense of sadness. Maybe tomorrow she will draw Annalise a picture of the cameo brooch. Show her that her mother had a cameo too, or so Hattie vaguely recalls. Lightning flickers far off outside the bunkhouse window. Hattie hushes her breathing. She closes her tin box, determined not to let the thunder scare her. If only she could be brave like a grown-up. She pictures Annalise's face and feels a tiny spark of comfort. Then, wrapping herself in a worn blanket, she falls asleep on the bunkhouse floor, cameo brooch cradled in her hand. Days pass, a fragile routine forming. Annalise tries to restore the kitchen garden, though the soil is nearly dust. Jeremiah rides into the nearest settlement for supplies. He returns with less than needed muttering about lack of funds. Hattie trails after. Annalise helps gather scraps of wood braids, bits of leftover yarn into small shapes. She never speaks, but her presence is a quiet comfort in the lonely ranch. One sultry afternoon, searching for a half-broken pitchfork in the barn, Annalise stumbles across a locked chest behind stacked barrels. The lock is old, rusted. She starts to turn away, then notices a sheet of paper poking out from under the lid, as though the chest didn't quite close properly. On it, in bold handwriting that she vaguely recognizes from Augustus's letters, are the words, "Forgive me," scrawled multiple times. Her heart thunders. She reaches out, tries to lift the lid. It doesn't budge. She jiggles the lock. Rust flakes off, but it stays sealed. She glances around. The barn is quiet. Dust motes swirl in golden beams of sunlight piercing the slats. She pictures Augustus, troubled, scribbling these words. Was this his confession or a last testament? Footsteps approach. She jumps, heart pounding, as Jeremiah's voice echoes in the barn's open doorway. Annalise, you in here? She whips around, forcing a neutral tone. Yes, just trying to find that pitchfork. Jeremiah crosses over, eyeing the chest. His expression darkens, though he tries to hide it. That old thing, worthless. I told Gus to throw it out. He steps forward, slides the barrels, effectively blocking the chest from view. Here. He gestures to the pitchfork leaning against the wall. This is the one you need. She wants to press him, to ask if he knows about the paper, the repeated words, "Forgive me." But a swirl of dread keeps her silent. Instead, she accepts the pitchfork, nods stiffly. Jeremiah attempts a casual smile. Need help clearing the weeds out back? It's tough ground. I'll manage, she says quietly. She notices how he doesn't meet her eyes, how his shoulders tense. He's hiding something, and this ranch is full of hidden corners. She wonders if she should just pry the chest open. Yet a fear of crossing lines stops her. Maybe the time to confront him is not now. That evening after the chores, they share a simple supper of beans and cornbread. Hattie eats quietly in a corner, occasionally glancing at Annalise. Jeremiah tries to discuss ranch matters, but the conversation is stilted. The air is warm and heavy. At last, he retreats to his own place on the property. Hattie nods off, so Annalise takes her to the bunkhouse, helps her onto a cot, and tiptoes away. Returning to the main house, she settles onto the front porch step. Above the sky is a tapestry of red and orange. No wind stirs. It's a moment outside of time, no immediate demands, no crisis or revelations, just the hush of desert twilight. Annalise breathes in the stillness, letting the tension in her body loosen. She thinks of the orchard illusions Augustus wrote about, his lines describing apple blossoms and rolling green hills. Why had he lied so thoroughly? The reality of Red Moon Ranch is dryness, ruin, half-buried secrets. I never meant to deceive you. The phrase echoes in her head. She closes her eyes. A memory surfaces of her father years ago, reading from a battered family Bible. She remembers how the lamplight warmed his face, how safe she felt. And then the heartbreak of losing him to war. She's known betrayal from life before. Perhaps she can endure it again. But something about this ranch, about Hattie's silent eyes, about Jeremiah's haunted posture, stirs a longing in her to mend what's broken. Maybe she muses mending this ranch is akin to mending herself. The world grows darker. The hush deepens. She remains there, letting the night cradle her. For once, action is not required. For once, she allows herself to feel the sorrow of illusions lost and the faint spark of hope in forging something new. A slow, solemn acceptance. The next morning, Hattie tugs at Annalise's sleeve, leading her behind the bunkhouse. She points to a stack of planks as though she wants to build something. Annalise laughs softly. "What do you want to make, sweet girl?" But Hattie just sets a small board on the ground, picks up a nail, and gestures for help. The child's determination is clear. Annalise kneels. "All right." She helps position nails. Hattie taps them with a rock, mimicking hammer strokes. The shape is unclear, but the child is definitely creating something. Jeremiah passes by with a ledge of feet on his shoulder, slows to watch them. A faint smile touches his lips, a rare softness. Then he hurries away as though reluctant to dwell in any warmth. Annalise feels a pang. She wonders if Jeremiah regrets something from the war or from Augustus's final days. She wonders if Hattie is truly an orphan. Could she be related to Jeremiah or Augustus? She sets aside the thought. Focus on the present, she tells herself. This ranch needs small joys. In the early afternoon, while Hattie naps on a pile of blankets, Annalise slips inside the house. The memory of that half-open desk drawer gnaws at her. She enters the living area, drags a chair over, and carefully opens the drawer. The old envelope still sits there. Her heart hammers. She pulls out the letter, unfolds it. "I can't keep wearing another man's name. I was born Fletcher. I took Augustus Ward after that night near Shiloh. The soldier whose name I took was lying dead at my feet. He was everything I wasn't: honorable, loyal. I only meant to keep living, but I trapped myself in a lie. If you come out west, you must know you won't truly be coming to meet Augustus Ward. You'll meet me, Fletcher. I never meant to drag you into this. I never meant to deceive you." The words blur before her eyes. Fletcher, he was never Augustus Ward. Annalise's breath comes in short bursts. She sets the paper down, mind spinning. So the man who wrote her letters was a deserter or an imposter. And Jeremiah Ward, where does he fit in if his brother was not truly his brother? A board squeaks. She twists around to see Jeremiah in the doorway, face tight. He sees the letter in her hand. Something fierce flickers in his eyes. "You shouldn't be reading that," he says quietly, a tremor in his voice. "There are some truths that do more harm than good." Her pulse races. "Jeremiah, he wasn't your real brother, was he?" He exhales, raw grief cutting through. "No. But I needed to believe he was. My actual brother died in the war. This man stumbled onto the ranch after the war ended. He had my brother's old papers, his name. At first I wanted to kill him for that theft, but I saw desperation, remorse. He said he'd do anything to atone, to rebuild the ranch. So I let him stay. I let him be Augustus Ward." He swallows. "I guess I hoped some part of my real brother lived on." Annalise stands the letter trembling in her hand. But he wrote me letters for 3 years under that name, promised me orchard land, a life here. Everything was a facade. Jeremiah's gaze falls. He wanted redemption. I guess he thought, if he did enough good out here, maybe he could earn the right to keep that borrowed name. Then he mentioned you said your letters gave him hope. That's all I know. I never asked for the details. Maybe that was a mistake. Tears well in her eyes, a rush of betrayal and heartbreak. She had cherished those letters, believed the illusions. How did he die, she whispers. Really, Jeremiah sets his jaw. He took a horse out one stormy night, headed for the canyon. He never returned. They found him at the bottom of a ravine. Broken neck. He looks away. Whether it was an accident or something else, I can't say. Annalise fights a wave of sickness. So the man she thought was Augustus died with secrets unspoken. Guilt twists her insides. He had written that final letter, I never meant to deceive you. She must remember that it was not a malicious trick, it was desperation. But how could she reconcile it? She closes her eyes, breath shakily. Why not tell me at once I came all this way? Jeremiah's voice cracks. I was ashamed. I took him in. I let him keep the name. I never wanted to face that I had let a stranger replace my real brother. He runs a hand through his silvered hair. And you arrived so soon after I sent the telegram. I was going to tell you everything, but I'm not sure how. Her chest is tight. She sees the truth in his eyes, sorrow, confusion, a desire to make amends. Then she remembers the locked chest in the barn. What's in that chest behind the barrels? He tenses again. Nothing you need to see, just more burdens. Then he looks at her with quiet desperation. Stay at least for a while. Let me try to do right by you. I owe you that for the lie you were fed. She stares at the letter, at the scrawled confessions of a man named Fletcher, now lost. The illusions are shattered, but a fragile new clarity emerges. She's been searching for a place to belong, even if built on illusions. Perhaps Red Moon Ranch still offers a chance for belonging, just not in the way she expected. All right, she says faintly. I'll stay, but I won't accept more lies. No more secrets. Jeremiah inclines his head, relief tempered by the knowledge that this is only the beginning. Agreed. The next morning dawned unusually cool. Annalise Wynne stood by the kitchen window, the letter from the drawer still weighing on her mind. She could feel the house breathing around her old floorboards, shifting shadows. A faint breeze drifted through, stirring the dust. Outside, the sky was a pale blue streaked with salmon clouds, but she felt no calm in its beauty. Jeremiah Ward had unburdened part of his secret. The previous day, Augustus had never been Augustus at all, but a man named Fletcher, who assumed that identity after the war. This revelation answered one question and sparked a dozen more. Had Fletcher, the false Augustus, truly believed he could rebuild the ranch under a stolen name? And why was Jeremiah, a man apparently strict about honor, willing to let him? She thought, too, of the locked chest in the barn. Forgive me, scrawled in shaky handwriting. She pictured Fletcher writing it in a fever of guilt, perhaps, just before that fateful ride. Her chest squeezed at the thought. Hattie's out back, came Jeremiah's low voice from the threshold, startling her. He lingered in the doorway, eyes tired. She's waiting for you. Said something about helping with the weeds. She doesn't talk, Annalise murmured, grabbing a wide-brimmed straw hat. But I suppose she found her own way to tell you. He offered a small, almost sad smile. She pointed to the backyard with a determined look. He studied Annalise a moment, as though steeling himself to say more. About yesterday, I realize I've put a burden on you. If you need to question me, I'll do my best to give honest answers. Annalise nodded, fiddling with her hat's ribbon. There are things I want to know, yes, but I'm not sure how to ask. She paused. You said Fletcher came after the war with your brother's papers. So was it your idea to maintain the lie, or his Jeremiah's gaze shifted to the scuffed wood floor? At first I threatened him, accused him of grave robbery. I demanded to see the tags or dog papers with my brother's name. He showed me. Then he told me how he watched my brother die at Shiloh, how they served in the same unit but on opposite moral paths. I was furious, but I also saw that he was alone, ravaged by guilt. Something broke in me. I wanted to see my brother's face again so badly I let him stay. Let him assume the name. It was easier to pretend I still had family. A wave of pity washed over Annalise, tinged with anger at the deception. And Fletcher, did he ever talk about me to you? Did he mention why he asked me to come all this way? He said you gave him hope. Jeremiah answered quietly, lifting his head. He spoke of your letters as if they were a lifeline. I guess lying to you made him feel worse, but he thought by the time you arrived he'd have redeemed himself enough to tell the truth. But life doesn't always give us the time we want. Silence settled between them, charged with regret. Finally, Annalise cleared her throat. I'll go see about those weeds with Hattie. She brushed past him, gently stepping into the crisp morning light. She felt Jeremiah's eyes on her back, each of them tangled in guilt that wasn't entirely theirs. Behind the bunkhouse, Hattie perched on a log, poking at the ground with her ever-present stick. When Annalise approached, the girl rose a solemn light in her dark eyes. She carried a small, battered canvas bag slung over one shoulder. What's that? Annalise asked softly. Hattie didn't answer, but she pulled out a gardening trowel. The handle was chipped, the metal discolored. She offered it to Annalise, her gaze earnest. Thank you, Annalise said, touched. Let's see if we can't clear some of the old plants near the far fence. Maybe we'll find a patch of soil that still has life in it. Hattie nodded vigorously. Together they walked the perimeter behind the bunkhouse where the land sloped downward. The fence was half-rotted, missing boards. Tangles of sagebrush had overtaken a once straight row for planting. Kneeling, Annalise started to pry out dead roots. Hattie mimicked her, though, with smaller motions. The child's diligence stirred a warmth in Annalise's chest. Occasionally, the two of them would pause, wipe sweat from their brows, share a sip of water from a tin cup. Though no words passed between them, Annalise felt an almost conversation in their gestures, Hattie pointing to a stubborn root, Annalise nodding encouragement, Hattie beaming as she successfully dislodged it. Bit by bit, that little patch of earth felt less neglected. At length, Hattie took out a fragment of chalk from her canvas bag and drew a shape on a flat rock. A simple figure, but Annalise recognized it, a house with a door and two figures holding hands in front. The child then tapped her own chest, then touched Annalise's arm. It took Annalise a moment to realize the meaning. She sees me as part of her place of belonging, a home. Emotions tightened her throat. She touched Hattie's small shoulder gently. Yes, she whispered, blinking back tears. We can build that. We can try. That afternoon, Annalise was hauling water from the well behind the main house when she spotted a rider approaching from the dusty road that led to the ranch entrance. He wore a battered hat, pulled low posture, slumped. Not Jeremiah, he was out with the sheep, she knew. Her heart sped up. Was it a traveler needing supplies or a threat? Setting her bucket down, she watched him dismount near the porch, tying his horse to the hitching post. He removed his hat, revealing wavy blonde hair, and called out in a hesitant voice, "Anyone home?" Annalise stepped forward, the porch stairs creaking underfoot. "Yes," she replied, trying to sound composed. "Can I help you?" The stranger offered a careful smile. "Name's Lyndon Cray. Heard a rumor this ranch was hiring, or might be. I've been traveling job to job. You know if the boss needs a hand." She studied him. He had the lean, dusty look of a drifter, but not necessarily untrustworthy. Yet suspicion lingered after all she'd learned. The boss, Jeremiah Ward. He's out with the flocks, may not be back till dusk. "Could I wait?" Lyndon asked politely, wiping sweat from his brow. "My horse is near spent, and I'm short on water." Annalise nodded. "Wait in the shade if you like. There's a well out back if you need to water your horse. We're not exactly flush with supplies, but we can spare enough for you." His gratitude appeared genuine. "Thank you, ma'am. And might I get your name?" Annalise hesitated. "Annalise Wynne," she said simply. "No illusions. No stolen names." She studied him as he led his horse around. Something about the way he carried himself, like a man used to covering long distances with no home to anchor him. In a land of second chances and hidden sins, she wondered if this was just another desperate soul, or if he was connected to the ranch's deeper tangle. Jeremiah returned near sundown, leading a handful of scraggly sheep. He narrowed his eyes at the sight of Lyndon Cray sitting on the porch. Immediately, a guarded tension stiffened Jeremiah's frame. Lyndon rose, took off his hat. "Mr. Ward, I presume?" "I'm seeking work." Jeremiah glanced at Annalise as though for explanation. She gave a small shrug. He arrived earlier, asked permission to wait. She wasn't sure if she should advocate hiring him or not. Jeremiah let out a low breath, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't have much to offer. This ranch is struggling. If you're looking for easy wages, you won't find them here." Lyndon dipped his head. I don't need easy, sir. Just need honest. Jeremiah's gaze flicked to the man's horse, the threadbare saddle, the worn boots. Perhaps he recognized the same kind of desperation he'd once seen in Fletcher. He gave a reluctant nod. All right, there's a small bunkhouse, though it's in sorry shape. You can bed down there for now, help around with whatever needs doing. Then in a quieter tone, but if you cause trouble, we'll ask you to leave. Lyndon's hand flexed on his hat brim. I'm not one for trouble. With that, Jeremiah showed him around the property, leaving Annalise feeling a swirl of relief and anxiety. Another soul on the ranch. Another potential secret. She hoped it would not add more burdens to a place already heavy with them. That evening, in the dim glow of the main house's parlor, Annalise found Hattie curled up on the old sofa. The child must have drifted in after finishing her drawings outside. She seemed at ease, as if the ranch had become her domain. Annalise touched Hattie's shoulder lightly. Are you hungry? Hattie stirred, nodding, but not speaking. She stood taking Annalise's hand and led her into the kitchen. Annalise dished out some beans and cornbread left over from earlier. As they ate in comfortable silence, she tried to gather her courage to ask about Hattie's past. But how to question a child who could not speak? Finally, Annalise retrieved a small slate and a piece of chalk from a shelf. She handed them to Hattie along with a gentle smile. Can you draw me your family? She asked softly. Hattie's brow furrowed. She stared at the chalk for a moment. Then she slowly began to draw. First, she sketched a silhouette of a woman with long hair, then a small figure, presumably a child. Next to these figures, she scrawled a shape that looked like a tall man, but the face was scribbled out with frantic strokes. She circled that face again and again, as though distressed. Then she added an X over the entire image. Annalise's heart sank. She whispered, Is that your mother and father? Hattie's gaze remained on the slate. She tapped the figure of the woman with her chalk, then touched the cameo at her throat, a cameo she'd started wearing on a small string. That cameo, Annalise realized, might be her mother's image. Then Hattie pointed to the man's figure and put a line through it. Fear flickered across her face. Before Annalise could ask more, Hattie hurriedly wiped the slate clean with her sleeve, as though erasing the painful memory. Her tiny shoulders trembled. Annalise swallowed dismay and sympathy, twisting inside her. This child's father might be gone, or an abusive presence. She fled. She remembered Jeremiah's mention that Hattie's father had abandoned her, but the terror in the child's eyes suggested something worse than mere abandonment. Tangle number 2 was forming. Hattie's past carried hidden trauma. Possibly Jeremiah knew more than he'd let on, or perhaps Fletcher had tried to shield her. Annalise gently took Hattie's hand, rubbing small comforting circles. The child clung to her, eyes haunted. Later that night, once Hattie was settled back in the bunkhouse, and Lyndon had retreated to a corner pallet there as well, Annalise found herself alone in the main house. She heated water for tea using the last pinch of leaves she'd brought from Boston. This was a small luxury, one that connected her to the life she used to lead. She poured the tea into a chipped mug, carried it onto the porch, and settled into a rickety rocking chair. The hush of nighttime desert pressed in. A waxing moon cast silver glimmers across the barn roof, the paddock fence. In the distance, she heard a faint coyote call, answered by another. The lonely melody of the wild. Taking a sip, she let her thoughts drift. The child's silent plea, the chest with "forgive me." Jeremiah's mixture of regret and kindness, Fletcher's tragic identity theft. So many tangled threads. She felt the weight of them all. Why am I here? She asked herself for the 100th time. But deep in her chest, she knew the answer, because maybe, just maybe, she could help this place heal. And in doing so, heal herself. Her gaze wandered to a corner of the porch where a battered stool held a small stack of books. One had a curled piece of paper sticking out. She leaned over, curious. It was a ledger, dates, figures of expenditures, wages. Fletcher's scrawling penmanship was evident. The last entry read April 2nd, 1871. Cannot pay remaining hands. Must find another way. That was just days before his fatal ride. She traced the dried ink with her fingertip, feeling a pang. A man on the brink of financial ruin, wearing a stolen name, longing to set things right. Annalise closed the ledger. You didn't have time, she murmured. But I'm here now. She let the night cradle her in silence, a gentle moment of reflection that eased her tension. In this hush, she felt no immediate push or pull, just the slow expansion of her own resolve. She would keep going, keep piecing together the truth, even if it hurt. In the days that followed, Lyndon Cray proved himself a competent worker. He repaired fences, coaxed the old well pump into better function, and even found a way to haul water from the creek. Jeremiah remained watchful, not fully trusting, but he didn't complain when Lyndon's efforts eased the workload. One afternoon, Annalise joined Lyndon by the barn helping stack fresh timbers. The heat was stifling. She paused to drink water from a ladle. Lyndon, hammer in hand, offered a friendly grin. "You're tough, Miss Wynne. Most ladies wouldn't be out here in the midday sun." She shrugged. "I'm no stranger to hard work. The East has factories and mills just as taxing, though the desert is a new challenge for me." He nodded a bit subdued. "I heard you mention you came out here because of someone." She froze a second, debating how to respond. Then she gave a measured answer. "A man who wrote letters promising a future, but he passed away before I arrived." Sympathy flickered in Lyndon's eyes. "Sorry to hear that. The West is full of sad stories." He lowered his hammer. "I also heard about Hattie. She's a bright little soul. Do you know if she has family anywhere?" "No," Annalise admitted. "I only know her father is gone, and no mother came forward to claim her. Jeremiah says she's been here quite some time." A thoughtful hush hung between them. Then Lyndon stepped closer, voice quieter. "I don't mean to pry, but I noticed the old bunkhouse has some scratchings on the walls, dates and names. Seems like folks used to come through here regularly, but it all stopped about a year ago." "Do you know what changed?" Annalise tensed. A year ago was roughly when Fletcher might have realized the ranch was sinking, or maybe something else forced people away. She shook her head. "I'm still putting those pieces together." Lyndon let out a low hum. "If you ask me, there's more going on than meets the eye. But it's not my place to say unless Mr. Ward wants to open up." He hammered a nail in a board with a clean strike. "Anyway, I best get back to it." She nodded, thoughts swirling. The ranch had deeper scars than just financial trouble. Maybe it was time she confronted Jeremiah about Hattie's father or the mass exodus of workers. If she was to mend anything, she had to know the truth. That evening, determined to get answers, Annalise caught Jeremiah outside the barn as he was unsaddling a weary horse. "May I see what's in that locked chest?" "The one behind the barrel," she asked calmly, though her heart pounded. He stilled fingers loosening on the saddle girth. A flicker of resignation crossed his face. "I had a feeling you'd ask." Her voice softened. "I need to know what Fletcher was asking forgiveness for. If I'm to help with this ranch's future, I can't be shut out from its past." Jeremiah looked pained. Slowly he nodded. "All right, but remember, it's not easy." They walked into the barn, dust swirling in the lamplight. Together they moved the barrels aside. Jeremiah knelt by the chest, rummaged in his pocket for a small key. The lock clicked. Rusted metal squeaked as he lifted the lid. Inside lay a stack of papers, a few cloth-wrapped items, and a heavy leather-bound journal. Jeremiah's eyes reflected regret as he drew out the journal, flipping it open. "Fletcher kept this. Wrote about the war, about taking my brother's name, about seeing men desert and die." Annalise took a slow breath. "May I read it?" Jeremiah handed it over, though he didn't look at her. He rummaged further, removing a worn cavalry jacket riddled with tears, a set of tarnished dog tags reading A, Ward, and a small wooden box. Lifting the lid of the wooden box, Jeremiah revealed 7 uniform patches each, with a different soldier's name singed at the edges. Annalise's stomach clenched. "These patches," Jeremiah's voice was hoarse, "from men in his unit, I think. Or maybe men he saw fall." Fletcher's guilt was like a storm he couldn't outrun. He exhaled shakily. "I never asked him for details. I just didn't want to know." Annalise turned her attention to the journal. She flicked through pages, glimpsing scrawled lines describing nights of fear. The day he swapped dog tags with a dead man named Augustus Ward, a sense of unworthiness. Then near the end, one entry stood out. "There is also a child at the ranch unspoken. She reminds me of the innocence we lost. She can't speak but tries to. I wish I could protect her from all the sins lying under this sun. If I can't bring her father to account, at least I can keep her safe for now." Annalise's heart hammered. Hattie was Fletcher referencing Hattie. Had he known her father known something monstrous? She looked up at Jeremiah, mind racing. He wrote that about a child. Must be Hattie. Jeremiah grimaced. Gus Fletcher was protective of her. Yes, I never asked why, but he'd scold me or the hands if we tried to push her too hard. She seemed to fear men with raised voices. Annalise recalled the frantic scribble on Hattie's drawing. So Hattie's father did something that Fletcher felt needed atonement? Jeremiah shut the wooden box softly. I suspect so. She showed up not long after Fletcher came. The old caretaker, Wardell, said she'd been left by a stranger who never returned. Fletcher insisted we keep her safe, feed her. I obliged, but never pried. Tangle number 3 was forming. The same father who abandoned Hattie might have a link to Fletcher's war secrets. Perhaps Fletcher had confronted him. The pieces were swirling, yet not fully connecting. Jeremiah placed a trembling hand on the chest lid. You see why I let him keep my brother's name? He was trying to do right in a twisted way. He wanted to protect that child, fix the ranch, restore something good out of all the lies. Then he died. Annalise laid a comforting hand on Jeremiah's shoulder. We can still do right by Hattie, even if Fletcher's gone. Jeremiah swallowed hard, nodding. Together, they tucked the items back into the chest. But the revelations had left a raw ache. Fletcher's final regrets. Hattie's father's involvement. They were only halfway to the truth. As days turned into a week, the ranch found a steadier rhythm. Lyndon Cray pitched in. Hattie followed Annalise around like a shadow, and Jeremiah maintained a quiet watch. Yet tension simmered beneath the surface, refusing to fade. One afternoon, Lyndon approached Annalise while she was mending a torn canvas. He looked uneasy, eyes flicking around to ensure no one else overheard. Miss Wynne, you remember I said the bunkhouse walls had names and dates? I did more reading in there last night. There was one name repeated along with a phrase, he'll come back. He always does. Annalise paused her stitching. What name? Lyndon drew a scrap of paper from his pocket, showing messy handwriting, Leander Wolcott. Underneath was scrawled, he'll come back. He always does. That ring any bells? Lyndon asked, voice tense. I figure it might be a ranch hand who caused trouble, but something about the repetition gave me chills. Annalise thought back to Fletcher's journal, the mention of Hattie's father. Could Leander Wolcott be the father? She shook her head. I'm not sure. Jeremiah's the only one who might know. Or maybe Hattie, but she can't speak. Lyndon nodded, glancing around again. Just be careful is all. Feels like some folks left this place in a hurry. Their scrawls read like warnings. A ripple of unease passed through Annalise. She recalled the exodus of workers. Had they fled because a dangerous man was rumored to return? He'll come back. He always does. She gathered her resolve. They needed answers, even if it meant delving into ugly chapters. Determined to learn more, Annalise convinced Jeremiah they should ride into the small settlement of Silverthorne, the same place she'd first arrived by train to check Old Town records or ask the station clerk about ranch employees. Jeremiah grudgingly agreed, perhaps realizing they had to face the past. They set off at dawn. Hattie remained at the ranch under Lyndon's watchful eye. The ride took them along dusty trails, mesquite trees arching overhead. Jeremiah was silent most of the way, his brow creased. Annalise pressed him only once, gently. If we find something about that name, Leander Wolcott, will you tell me if it stirs any memory? He exhaled. I will. Silverthorne was still modest, a handful of buildings near the railway line, a small general store, a saloon, a telegraph office, and a chapel. Annalise's stomach fluttered, recalling the day she arrived to find no one waiting. Jeremiah dismounted and tied the horses by the store's hitching post. We can try the clerk at the telegraph or the sheriff's office for any mention of a Wolcott. She nodded, stepping down carefully. The dusty street was quiet except for a few passers-by. First, they tried the telegraph office. The young clerk had no records of a Leander Wolcott. Next, they checked the mercantile where the storekeeper rummaged old ledger notes of credit. Nothing matching that name. A building labeled sheriff turned out to be locked, a note pinned to the door. Gone to deliver prisoner to Tucson. Back next week. So much for that. At last they visited the station building itself. The station master, an older woman named Lucille Grant, eyed Jeremiah warily. Mr. Ward. Long time since I've seen you. Her tone was polite but guarded. "We're looking for any mention of a man named Leander Wolcott," Jeremiah said, bracing. "Possibly connected to the ranch." Lucille pressed her thin lips together. "I can check passenger logs, but I recall no Wolcott traveling in or out. But I do remember hearing talk. Someone said he didn't always use his real name." She peered at Annalise. "That might be why you can't find him straightforwardly." Annalise's pulse quickened. "Another imposter," Lucille let out a dry chuckle. "Who knows, in these parts people come west to lose themselves or bury their sins. Wait here." She disappeared into a back room rummaging for records. Jeremiah and Annalise exchanged uneasy glances. At length Lucille returned, producing a tattered ledger. "Around a year ago, a man matching the description, blonde hair, tall, arrived under the name Edgar Wallace. But the conductor said he overheard the man give a different name to a companion, Wool something." She tapped the ledger. "He left on the freight line within a week. I never saw him again." Jeremiah's jaw tightened. "So he came and went quickly. Might not be the same man, but it's a lead." Lucille's eyes flicked to Annalise's anxious face. She relented with a sigh, leaning closer. "Rumor was he was looking for a child. Said he was owed money or revenge, depending on who you asked. People got spooked." She fixed Jeremiah with a pointed look. "If that's the man you're seeking, be wary. Something about him felt dangerous." A shiver ran up Annalise's spine. A child he sought Hattie. She realized this might be Hattie's father, or someone bent on claiming her for some twisted reason. She swallowed. "Thank you, Ms. Grant," she murmured. Outside the station, the morning sun glared too bright. Jeremiah looked grim. If that man was Hattie's father, no wonder the ranch hands fled. They must have feared he'd come for her or for them. Fletcher tried to keep her safe. He paused, mouth thinning. It's possible he's still out there. Annalise's thoughts churned. The partial name, the cameo. He always does. She pictured the scrawled bunkhouse warning. This was not only about forging an identity, this was about protecting a child from a man rumored to bring harm. "We have to be prepared. We can't let Hattie fall into his hands." Jeremiah agreed quietly. "We'll watch over her, whatever it takes." They rode back to Red Moon Ranch, the weight of possibility looming. Approaching the yard, Annalise saw Hattie crouched by the fence, chalking on a flat board. Lyndon stood nearby, arms folded, expression perplexed. As soon as Hattie saw Jeremiah and Annalise, she beckoned them urgently. Her chalk lines formed what looked like a canyon with rocky walls. In the center was a small figure. Off to one side, a bigger figure loomed with a menacing shape, brandishing a branding iron or a whip. It was hard to tell. Hattie's eyes pleaded with them, her lips parted almost as though she might speak. Jeremiah's heart seemed to lurch. "That looks like Coyote Bend, one of the canyons near the ranch boundary. It's a dangerous place." Lyndon frowned. Why is she drawing that? Annalise crouched, gently touching Hattie's shoulder. "Sweet girl, is this something you dreamed or something you remember?" she asked, voice soft. Hattie's hand trembled as she added a swirl of red at the canyon floor, as if indicating blood or fire. A chill ran through Annalise. She recalled Fletcher's final ride might have taken him near a canyon. Hattie tapped the swirl of red. Then she drew a small shape, crossing it, maybe a horse or a man. Suddenly, tears slipped from her eyes. She rubbed them furiously, refusing to let out a sob. Annalise exchanged glances with Jeremiah. The child was remembering some horrific event at the canyon. Maybe it was connected to Fletcher's death. Or maybe it was something from her own father's cruelty. This was a puzzle made of fear and memory. Jeremiah inhaled. "We can check that canyon. See if there's any sign, though it's been months since Fletcher died." Hattie stared, as if waiting for them to realize more. She drew a tiny figure with braids herself and an arrow pointing away from the canyon. Then the bigger shape with a whipped line pointing back to it. She scrawled an X over the smaller figure's mouth. Annalise's throat tightened. She was threatened, told not to speak, by a man who took her there, or threatened to take her there. Jeremiah's expression hardened. That might be how she lost her voice. Fear or trauma. If it's Wolcott or whoever he is. A hush fell. Then Hattie closed her eyes, pressing her chalk to the board, as if snapping it in frustration. The piece broke. Annalise gently gathered her into an embrace. "It's all right," she whispered. "We won't let him hurt you." But a flicker of doubt gnawed at her. If that man truly planned to return, how would they protect a ranch with so few resources? And how far was Jeremiah willing to go to right these wrongs? That evening, after Hattie fell asleep in the bunkhouse, Jeremiah confided to Annalise inside the main house. He produced a battered letter from the chest, handing it over. She recognized Fletcher's scrawl. He calls himself Leander Wolcott now, but he's used other names. He's the one who shot your brother Jeremiah, or so I suspect. I recognized his face in an old photograph from the 4th Infantry. He's cunning. He forced Hattie's mother, threatened her life. The child was left behind here when her mother died. Wolcott wants something, money or silence. He threatened me if I spoke. But I can't live with that. If I vanish, protect her. Annalise's hand flew to her mouth. Wolcott might be the one who killed your real brother and also harmed Hattie's mother. Jeremiah gave a sad, weary nod. Fletcher believed so, yes. But we can't prove it. Wolcott was a shadow slipping in and out. Fletcher told me scraps how Wolcott blackmailed soldiers, forced deserters to do his bidding, maybe even trafficked stolen goods during the war. He was dangerous. Annalise felt queasy. Does that mean your brother died because of Wolcott's involvement in desertion or betrayal? And Fletcher took your brother's name after finding him dead on the battlefield? Jeremiah's gaze darkened. Possibly. The lines between villain and victim get blurred in war. Fletcher might have confronted Wolcott about Hattie's mother, tried to keep the child safe, but it cost him his life too. He sighed. Tangle number 3 is that Wolcott's threat lingers. He might return seeking hush money or revenge. God knows what else. Annalise steeled herself. Then we can't wait for him to strike. We have to bring these truths to light somehow, or at least ensure Hattie's protection. She deserves a childhood free from terror. Jeremiah's face softened. He looked older, heartbreak etched in the lines around his eyes. You're right, but how the law out here is patchy. The sheriff's hours away might not believe a story of war crimes and hidden identities. She straightened her spine, determination rising. We keep watch. We gather what proof we can. Like Fletcher's journal, the dog tags this letter. If Wolcott shows his face, we confront him not with violence, but with the truth. We'll threaten to expose him to the authorities if he tries to harm Hattie. Jeremiah managed a wavering smile. You have more courage than sense, Miss Wynne. She shook her head. Courage and sense can coexist. She paused, then quietly added, I'm staying. I won't leave you or Hattie to face this alone. Something flickered in Jeremiah's eyes, admiration, gratitude, guilt. Thank you, he murmured, voice thick. I'm not sure we deserve it, but thank you. In a cinematic flashback style triggered in Annalise's mind as she rereads Fletcher's journal that night. She sees the lines, I found the child weeping by the corral. She flinched at every noise. She clutches a cameo with a woman's face, her mother's, I think. I told her I'd keep her safe if it was the last thing I did. I lied to so many, but not to her. She deserves truth even if I can't speak it aloud. Perhaps I can protect her from Wolcott's poison. If I fail, let someone kinder take my place. In this flash of memory, Annalise imagines Fletcher guiding the small girl into a bunkhouse, offering her a blanket. The child is trembling, tears on her cheeks. Fletcher's voice is gentle as he kneels, saying, No one will hurt you here. The image fades, swirling into the present. Annalise shuts the journal, tears stinging her eyes. Fletcher's final legacy was not the orchard illusions. It was love for a frightened child. He might have stolen a name, but he tried to give something real in return. Annalise's heart aches with a strange mixture of sorrow and admiration. Days pass, each one marked by anxious vigilance. Jeremiah instructs Lyndon to keep an eye on the approach roads. Annalise teaches Hattie small tasks like making bread or patching torn shirts. But the child is often restless, scanning the horizon as if sensing a storm on the way. One afternoon, a stranger is spotted riding along the boundary fence. Lyndon rushes to warn Jeremiah. By the time they arrive, the figure is gone. Only hoof prints remain in the sandy soil heading north. At dinner, Jeremiah reveals that the tracks lead toward a canyon pass. Might just be a traveler, he says, though. No one truly believes that. A hush falls around the table. Hattie hovers near, hugging her cameo. Annalise sets down her fork, appetite gone. If Wolcott is circling, testing their defenses, they must be ready. That night, while Jeremiah mends harness straps, Annalise pores over more pages of Fletcher's journal. Near the back, a single entry catches her eye. If anything happens to me, let Jeremiah know the cameo around the child's neck once belonged to the Ward family. She's rightful kin by blood. Annalise's heart lurches. Rightful kin by blood. Did that mean Hattie was somehow related to the real Augustus Ward, or Jeremiah himself? She gasps, rereading the line. Perhaps Hattie's mother was Jeremiah's sister or cousin, or Fletcher discovered something that made Hattie a partial heir to the ranch. Jeremiah looks up from his corner, noticing Annalise's shock. What is it? Wordlessly, she passes him the journal. He reads, eyes widening. That cameo belonged to the Ward family, but I only had one sister, and she died in infancy. My brother never married. No known cousins. Annalise shook her head in confusion. Could Fletcher have been mistaken? Or is it possible your brother fathered a child in secret? Maybe Hattie's mother was local. Jeremiah set the journal aside, rubbing his temples. The cameo. She always grips it like a lifeline. If it truly came from my family, then could Hattie be my niece? His voice trembled with a strange mix of hope and dread. Has she ever let you see it closely? Annalise asked. Maybe there's an inscription. Jeremiah swallowed. I've never tried. She's protective of it. They sat in troubled silence. Hattie might be a hidden descendant of the Ward family, making Wolcott's involvement even more sinister. If he believed a child had claimed a land or inheritance, he might use that as leverage. Tangle number 2 was no longer just about Hattie's unknown father. It was about her possible connection to the Ward name. A few evenings later, a note appears pinned to the fence post near the barn, scrawled in a jagged hand. Return the girl or face the secrets buried at Coyote Bend. Jeremiah's face goes pale with anger. Annalise's stomach churns. Wolcott is here or close by, leaving threats. The reference to secrets buried lines up with Hattie's drawings of a canyon scene. Could he be referencing the actual site where the real Augustus Ward died? Or worse, Lyndon reads the note with a scowl. He's baiting you, boss. Wants you to come to that canyon, probably. Jeremiah nods. We can't let him corner us there, but we also can't ignore it. He glances at Annalise. We should at least see if there's any physical evidence out there. Maybe we can find something about Fletcher's last moments. That might give us leverage. Annalise squares her shoulders. We'll go tomorrow at first light. But Hattie stays here with Lyndon. Hattie overhears, eyes widening in fear. She shakes her head vigorously, pantomiming that she wants to come. Annalise kneels, taking the girl's hands. We'll be back, she soothes. We just need to see it. You'll be safe here. Hattie clings to her cameo, tears bright in her eyes. A part of Annalise wonders if she's doing the right thing. Exposing themselves to Wolcott's territory is risky. But knowledge is power, and Fletcher's journal indicated something crucial might be found at that canyon. No more illusions, she tells herself. Only the truth. Before dawn, Jeremiah and Annalise mount up, each wearing sturdy boots and carrying canteens of water. Jeremiah carries a firearm, though he states firmly he hopes not to use it. The desert morning is cold, but they know it will heat quickly. They set out, leaving Lyndon to guard the ranch. Hattie watches from the porch, silently pleading with her eyes. Annalise gives the child a final reassuring wave. Then they vanish into the dusty horizon. The ride is long, the trail rough. They pass scraggly brush, cacti, and outcroppings of rock. Jeremiah leads the way to Coyote Bend. The canyon walls rise abruptly, layered with red and ochre striations. As they enter the narrow pass, the air stills thick with tension. Shadows slice across the ground. Annalise's pulse thrums. She recalls Hattie's chalk, drawing a swirl of red signifying violence. Fletcher once traveled this path. Her imagination conjures his final moments. Was he chased, cornered? They dismount, tie the horses to a stunted tree. Jeremiah speaks softly. Keep your eyes open for anything that might be a clue, footprints, a hidden camp, anything. She nods, scanning the rocky floor. A hush envelops them, broken only by the occasional scrape of pebbles underfoot. The canyon winds deeper, forming a blind curve. Overhead, vultures circle on faint thermals. The place feels haunted, each echo a whisper of old tragedies. Rounding a bend, they stumble upon a shallow depression in the ground, covered with partially dislodged stones. Nearby, a wooden cross lay snapped in half. Weather and time had done their work. Jeremiah crouches, expression grim. Someone tried to mark a grave here. Could it be Fletcher's? Annalise kneels, 2 fingers, brushing the broken wood. There's no name. She gently pushes aside some stones, revealing a tarnished belt buckle. It bears the letters AW. Her heart clenches. Augustus Ward, or the real Ward's belt. Fletcher had it. It might have been left behind. Jeremiah picks up the buckle, eyes glistening. He must have died here, or someone buried him in haste. He looks around at the canyon walls, and if Wolcott was involved, he might have booby-trapped or used this site to threaten anyone who came searching. Just then, Annalise notices an old satchel half buried under a rock ledge. She tugs it free, grimacing at the rotted leather. Inside is a single water-stained journal page scrawled in the same hand as Fletcher's other writings. He demanded I give up the child. Said the Ward name belonged to a worthless cause, but I refused. If I don't return, let the world know that Leander Wolcott's crimes did not end with the war. He's no rightful father. Hattie must never be his to claim. Tears prick Annalise's eyes. Fletcher truly sacrificed himself trying to keep Hattie safe. She passes the page to Jeremiah, who reads it in a heavy silence. They stand in that lonely place, the canyon's hush amplified by the weight of truth. Fletcher's final attempt to expose Wolcott might have cost him his life. Tangle number 2 merges with Tangle number 3. Hattie's father is a criminal threat, and Fletcher died resisting him. A sudden crunch of gravel makes them spin. A figure stands at the canyon entrance. Even at a distance, the posture is predatory. A wide-brimmed hat conceals much of his face, but a grim smile is visible. He calls out, voice echoing, "So you found the grave. That means you found his last confession, too." "Perfect." Jeremiah's hand goes to his holster. "Wolcott," he growls, "stay where you are." The man Leander Wolcott tilts his head. "No need for guns. I'm here on a peaceful errand. You can keep the grave. I only want what's mine." The little girl. Annalise's heart thuds. She tries to speak steadily. "She's not yours. If you were truly her father, you wouldn't have abandoned her or threatened her." Wolcott laughs, a cold sound, spoken like a naive outsider. "I never wanted a child, but that cameo and those worthless illusions of inheritance are worth money to the right buyer. Her mother died in an unfortunate accident. The girl was baggage." He steps closer. "Now hand her over, or this ranch you cling to will see trouble. I've friends who owe me favors." Jeremiah's eyes blaze. "We won't, not ever. The law will hear of your war crimes." Wolcott's grin twists. "The law, you think some dusty frontier sheriff will care about old war tales or about a silent child?" He gestures to the grave. "Look how well that ended for the last man who tried to cross me." A tremor passes through Annalise. She grips Jeremiah's arm. "We have Fletcher's writings, your name, the real story of what happened here. That alone can damn you if we share it widely." Wolcott's face darkens. "You think words on paper matter, people believe what they want. But let me guess, you're the new caretaker of that sweet, mute girl. Then you do the burying next time. Because if I can't have her, no one will." He advances another step. Jeremiah draws his revolver, but keeps it pointed at the ground. "Take one more step and I will fire." Wolcott hesitates, eyes flicking from Jeremiah's trembling hand to Annalise's stance. "You'd kill for a child that's not even yours, Ward. I know all about the illusions you let that imposter hold. You're no saint. Couldn't save your real brother, couldn't save Fletcher." Jeremiah's voice trembles with anger. "I couldn't. But I'll die before I let you take Hattie." They stand in a deadlock. The canyon air pulses with dread. The quiet tension is suffocating. No gunshots ring out, no sudden moves. After a heart-stopping moment, Wolcott smirks. "You can't watch her forever. Sooner or later, I'll come to claim what's mine." Without waiting for a response, he backs away. Footfalls scraping over stone, then mounts a horse hidden behind the bend. In a plume of dust, he's gone. Annalise staggers, chest heaving. Jeremiah's face is ashen. She places a trembling hand on his shoulder. "He'll come. He means it." He lowers the revolver, eyes burning. "Then we have to be ready. We'll gather every piece of evidence, every witness. We'll go to the law if we must, and if the law fails, we'll stand him down ourselves." Annalise's tears threaten, but she forces composure. Fletcher's final wish was that we protect Hattie. We won't fail him. They returned to Red Moon Ranch as dusk fell, the sky tinged with deep reds and purples. Annalise Wynne rode in silence, her mind churning with images of Leander Woolcott, that cold smirk, the ultimatum he'd issued. Next to her, Jeremiah Ward stared straight ahead, jaw tight. She knew his thoughts mirrored her own. How do we protect Hattie from a man so ruthless? As they passed the final bend in the trail, the ranch's outline came into view, the main house, the bunkhouse, the small corral. A lone lantern burned on the porch, and Lyndon Cray stood watch near the hitching post. The sight eased some of Annalise's tension. At least they weren't returning to an abandoned scene. They dismounted. Hattie rushed out of the bunkhouse cameo, clutched in one hand, her dark eyes scanning them anxiously. Annalise knelt, arms open, and Hattie flung herself forward. The child trembled, perhaps sensing the fear they carried from the canyon. "It's all right," Annalise murmured, though she knew that was only half true. She stroked Hattie's hair, determined not to show her own tears. "We're home. We found where Fletcher was buried." Hattie's eyes brimmed with questions she could not voice. A flicker of sorrow crossed her face at the mention of Fletcher's name. Jeremiah stood over them, his expression haunted. Finally, he reached out, gently touching Hattie's shoulder. "We'll keep you safe," he said, "no matter what." Inside the main house, they convened around the worn dining table, Jeremiah, Annalise, Hattie, and Lyndon. The oil lamp sputtered, casting shadows on the walls. Jeremiah spread out the evidence they had gathered: Fletcher's journal letters, referencing Woolcott's crimes, the belt buckle from the canyon, the cameo's possible significance. Lyndon scowled at the mention of Woolcott's threat. "If he has associates, he could storm in anytime," he said quietly, arms folded. "We're outnumbered." Annalise nodded, heart hammering. Confronting him head-on might just provoke violence. "But we can't wait for him to strike. We need a plan that forces him to back down." She touched Fletcher's journal. He feared no one would believe these written words alone. "But what if we bring them to the local authorities anyway? At least try to involve the sheriff in Silverthorne, or even better, the bigger office in Tucson." Jeremiah looked grim. "They might dismiss it as an old war grievance. Still, we can't do nothing." He tapped a page detailing how Woolcott blackmailed deserters and threatened families. "If we can get others to testify, maybe the sheriff can't ignore it. Even if he's gone traveling, we can speak to a deputy in Tucson. That's about 2 days' ride from here." Lyndon leaned over the journal. "We'd better move fast. If Woolcott realizes we're mobilizing, he might ambush us on the road." A heaviness fell. Hattie watched them, eyes flicking from face to face. Then, with a trembling hand, she drew a shape on the tabletop, dust a star or a badge. She looked up expectantly at Annalise, as if to say, "The law?" Annalise managed a small, pained smile. "Yes, child, we'll try the law." She turned to Jeremiah. "We should bring all crucial evidence with us. Hattie, too. If the sheriff or a judge sees her condition and cameo, they might realize we're telling the truth." Jeremiah's shoulders tensed. Traveling with a child through open territory. "If Woolcott intercepts us," Lyndon cut in, "I can stay behind, watch the ranch. Or ride at your side, whichever's best." Jeremiah exchanged a look with Annalise, and she saw the turmoil in his gaze. "Leaving the ranch vulnerable might be risky," she said. "But a 3-day round trip with only the two of us and Hattie might be just as dangerous." A long silence. Then Jeremiah made up his mind. "All right. Annalise and I will go, and Hattie too. Lyndon, you remain here, keep an eye out. If Woolcott appears, stall him, tell him we're off to present evidence to the authorities. Maybe that'll rattle him." Lyndon nodded slowly. "It's a gamble, but I see no better plan. I'll do my best." Annalise exhaled. They had a course of action, fragile, but at least it was something. She turned to Hattie. "We'll leave at dawn tomorrow. Pack lightly, bring your cameo. We'll keep you close." The child's lips parted as if she might try to speak. Then she closed them, nodding. Annalise's heart twisted, longing for the day Hattie found her voice again. Late that night, after Hattie had fallen asleep on a cot in the main house, Annalise wanted her near Jeremiah, sank into a chair by the hearth. He held the cameo Hattie so zealously guarded, having gently persuaded the girl to let him examine it. Annalise sat beside him, lamplight dancing on their faces. Jeremiah turned the cameo over in his calloused hands. "Fletcher claimed this once belonged to the real Ward family, but I've never seen it before. Could have been my mother's or grandmother's." He hesitated, then used a tiny knife edge to pry open the cameo's back. A hidden compartment popped free, revealing a minuscule slip of paper. Annalise leaned forward, heart pounding. He carefully extracted the paper, smoothing it on his knee. The ink had faded, but words were still legible to Lucy Ward. In memory of the child who may yet be born to grace our name. A.W. Annalise's eyes widened. Lucy Ward. Your mother. Jeremiah's brows drew together. Yes, Lucy was my mother's name. That means this cameo was a keepsake for a future child, possibly meant for my brother or me, or for the child my brother might have someday. Annalise held her breath. So if Hattie has it now, are we sure she's your brother's daughter? Jeremiah's throat bobbed. It's a strong possibility. If the real Augustus fathered a child in secret and somehow Hattie's mother ended up in Wolcott's path, that might explain everything. He lifted his gaze, anguish and awe mingling. That means Hattie might be my niece, rightful Ward blood. She has a claim to the ranch just like me. Annalise squeezed his arm gently. And you never knew. Augustus left for the war, never told you. Wolcott somehow got involved with Hattie's mother. The child ended up here. Her heart ached for the tragedy of it all. We have to protect her even more now. Jeremiah nodded. She deserves to know she's not alone in this world. His voice trembled, the old grief of losing his brother colliding with the hope of finding family again. A hush fell. The cameo's inscription changed everything. Annalise felt tears in her own eyes. She placed a hand over Jeremiah's. You have kin, Jeremiah. Hattie might heal something in both of you. He closed the cameo gently, tears glinting. Tomorrow we ride for Tucson. We'll fight for her place, for her safety. Dawn broke over a hazy sky. Annalise, Jeremiah, and Hattie packed a single mule with supplies. Lyndon stood by the porch quiet. He clasped Jeremiah's hand firmly. Good luck, he said, voice tight. I'll be ready here. Jeremiah nodded, taking in the ranch as though memorizing every detail. If Wolcott shows stay alive, don't confront him alone. Yes, sir. With that, they set off. Hattie sat atop Jeremiah's horse, arms around his waist, cameo hanging from her neck. Annalise rode behind on a borrowed mare, the pack mule, trailing her. The first hours passed in tense vigilance, scanning horizons for any sign of pursuit. They saw none, only the endless desert. At dusk, they made camp near a shallow creek. While Jeremiah tended to the horses, Annalise built a small fire. Hattie huddled close, whittling a piece of driftwood with a dull knife. The child shot glances at the darkening landscape, as if expecting Wolcott to emerge from every shadow. Jeremiah joined them, tossing extra kindling onto the fire. He looked worn, his eyes shadowed by worry. We're halfway there, he murmured, pulling out a map. Tomorrow we can push on. Might reach Tucson by evening if all goes well. Annalise nodded, stifling her anxieties. She gave Hattie a reassuring rub on the shoulder, then shifted her gaze to Jeremiah. When we reach Tucson, we find the sheriff, or a federal marshal if possible, show them Fletcher's journal and the cameo. We have to make them listen. He grimaced. I just hope they do. The orange glow of the fire flickered across his face, revealing deep lines of doubt. Wolcott is cunning, probably has intimidation tactics. We need the authorities on our side. Across from them, Hattie set down her whittling. She picked up a small branch and sketched shapes in the dirt near the fire's edge. First, she drew a swirl reminiscent of the cameo, then a smaller swirl next to it. She tapped the second swirl, tapping Jeremiah's hand, then tapped the cameo around her own neck. Annalise felt a wave of tenderness. She's linking you two, she said gently. Jeremiah's throat tightened. He ruffled Hattie's hair gently. Yes, sweetheart, I'm your family. Tears glistened. Hattie let her hand rest on his eyes, big with unspoken relief. Annalise watched them, her heart full despite the looming danger. They settled into a watch rotation, Jeremiah first, then Annalise. The desert night's chill wrapped around them. Stars shone overhead with quiet indifference. In the hush, Annalise found a moment's grace watching Jeremiah cradle Hattie with paternal protectiveness. A father's posture, though not by birth in the usual sense, but by blood's deeper labyrinth. She prayed it would be enough. By late afternoon the next day, they spotted Tucson's outskirts, a sprawl of adobe structures, bustling streets, and scattered ranches. Relief mingled with dread. Annalise felt the thickness of the warm air as they approached. We made it, she thought, scanning for a sign of law enforcement. They guided their horses into the main avenue, eyes peeled for the sheriff's office. Street vendors hawked wares wagons, creaked past, and dust rose in the summer heat. At last, they found a modest wooden building with a painted sign that read Sheriff's Department. Jeremiah dismounted, lifting Hattie down. Annalise hopped off her mare, heart pounding. Inside the station was cramped. A weary deputy in a sweat-stained shirt sat behind a desk. He glanced up, bored. "Something I can do for you folks," Jeremiah straightened. "We need to speak to the sheriff about a man named Leander Wolcott. He's threatened a child's life and may be guilty of war crimes. We have evidence." The deputy stifled a smirk. "War crimes? That's heavy talk. Sheriff's out on a call. Might be back tomorrow." He eyed the trio, noticing Hattie's cameo. "What proof you got?" Annalise stepped forward, pushing back her fear. She opened Fletcher's journal to the relevant entries, set it on the desk. Jeremiah showed the cameo's hidden inscription. The deputy flipped through the page's frown lines forming. "Huh. Well, this is a story, all right." He rubbed his chin. "You say this Wolcott is in the territory threatening to kidnap the girl." "Yes," Jeremiah said firmly. "He's blackmailed men, possibly murdered two of my kin. The child is his next target." The deputy stood. "I need to pass this on to the sheriff. We can't just dispatch men on hearsay. We need official statements, better documentation." Annalise's frustration flared. "It's not hearsay. Look at the letter references, the belt buckle from the canyon. This child can't speak, but she's terrified. At least keep her in protective custody or something." The deputy grimaced, looking torn. "I can't do that without the sheriff's approval. Let me write a telegram to the judge in Tombstone, see if there's an outstanding warrant for Wolcott." He gestured to a worn bench. "Meanwhile, you can wait here." Jeremiah's hand balled into a fist, but he reined in his anger. He shot Annalise a look of dismay as the deputy started tapping out a telegram. "Looks like we wait." They sank onto the bench, Hattie between them. The child's eyes flicked anxiously at the barred cell in the corner, the dusty wanted posters on the wall. Annalise put an arm around her. "We're doing the right thing," she reminded herself. "We just need patience." They waited an hour, then two. The deputy paced, occasionally glancing at them with a mixture of curiosity and doubt. Outside, the sun sank lower. Exhaustion tugged at Annalise's limbs. Suddenly, the door swung open. A lean, middle-aged man in a brown overcoat entered, hair streaked with gray. The deputy snapped to attention. "Sheriff Glass, these folks have a matter for you." The man, Sheriff Glass, raised a hand, stepping into the room with authority. His gaze flicked to Jeremiah. Then an odd recognition dawned. Jeremiah Ward. Jeremiah's eyes widened. "You know me?" Glass exhaled. "We served in the same unit for a short spell near the war's end. You might not recall, but I remember. You and your brother." His jaw tightened. "Heard he died." Jeremiah swallowed, and Annalise felt him tense. "Yes. And we've come about that. It involves a man named Leander Wolcott." Glass stiffened. "Wolcott. I've heard that name in passing rumors mostly. Some said he'd turned up around these parts stirring trouble." Jeremiah glanced at Annalise, hope flickering. "Yes, and we have evidence he threatened this child, possibly killed my brother. We want you to take action." The sheriff motioned them to speak further, and they laid out the evidence again. He frowned gravely at Fletcher's journal. "This is a lot to take in, but I trust you more than some strangers, Ward, because I recall your brother was honorable. If you say this is tied to his death..." He paused, reading a passage describing Wolcott's intimidation and the cameo's origin. Then he turned to Hattie, offering a gentle nod. "Poor thing. You're sure she's family?" Jeremiah's voice cracked. "The cameo's inscription was meant for my mother. We think she's my brother's daughter. I can't prove it beyond these items and Fletcher's notes, but I believe it." Glass's expression softened, then hardened. "All right. We'll keep a watch for Wolcott. If he's in the territory, I'll question folks around Tucson. But I can't arrest him on the spot for war crimes without proper authority. Desertion or impersonation might be overshadowed by the time that's passed. However, attempted kidnapping or threatened harm that we can act on if he shows his face." Annalise's anger flared. "So we're to wait until he tries something?" Glass shook his head. "I'll do more than that. I'll spread word to my deputies, alert the nearest towns. We'll keep an eye. In the meantime, you can stay in Tucson for safety. This is a bigger settlement than your ranch. Or you can ride back and count on us to come if you send word. It's your call." A heavy silence. Hattie clung to Annalise's hand, eyes wide. Annalise looked at Jeremiah. If we stay in Tucson, we abandon the ranch to Wolcott's men. Lyndon's there alone. He may not hold out. Jeremiah's face grim. We can't let Wolcott run us off our own land. I appreciate your help, Sheriff, but Red Moon Ranch is our home. Glass nodded. Then I'll set up a signal. If trouble arrives, get word to me and I'll come with a posse. In the meantime, let me see if I can confirm any open warrants on Wolcott. It was not the sweeping resolution Annalise had hoped for, but it was all the law could offer in this frontier, a measure of official awareness, a promise of backup. She closed her eyes, recalling Fletcher's final lines. If I vanish, protect her. Perhaps this was as much as they could do legally. They spent the night in Tucson's one decent inn, courtesy of the sheriff's arrangement. Hattie slept curled beside Annalise Cameo, shining in lamplight. Jeremiah paced the small room, restlessness in every movement. In the morning, they gathered their gear, said farewell to Sheriff Glass, and started the return ride. Glass repeated his vow to watch for Wolcott's associates. If you see him, send a rider or telegram. I'll come as soon as I can. Jeremiah thanked him, sincerity mixing with fatigue. Annalise murmured her gratitude. Then they were once more on the open road, hearts weighed down by uncertainty. At least we tried, Annalise told herself. We have the law behind us somewhat. The trip home was tense but uneventful, with no sign of pursuit. They arrived near sundown on the second day. Lyndon greeted them with a relieved grin. No trouble here. I've scouted the boundary each morning, no tracks. Maybe Wolcott took off. Annalise dismounted stiffly. Or he's biding his time. Jeremiah helped Hattie down, exhaustion evident on his face. We spoke to the sheriff. If Wolcott shows, we have to send word. That's our best hope. They led the horses to the stable and retreated indoors for a simple meal. The knowledge they had done all they could with the authorities was a small comfort, overshadowed by the sense of an unseen threat. That night, Annalise fell into a fitful sleep. She dreamed of the canyon again, Wolcott's silhouette, Fletcher's shallow grave. You can't protect her forever. She jerked awake at dawn, heart racing. As days stretched into weeks, no sign of Wolcott emerged. Tension eased slightly, though no one truly relaxed. Jeremiah and Annalise poured energy into the ranch's revival. With Lyndon's labor, they repaired the collapsed barn roof. Hattie helped replant seedlings in the garden. Bit by bit, Red Moon Ranch showed hints of life. One morning, Annalise discovered a small row of green sprouts in the once dead garden. Hattie beamed at the sight. The child clapped her hands in silent excitement, pointing for Jeremiah to see. He crouched, smiling at her. They're growing, he murmured. Like you, little one. Annalise's chest warmed. She thought of the orchard illusions from Fletcher's letters. Perhaps they would never have orchard trees in this harsh desert, but they could cultivate something real. Hope, she realized. That was the orchard he'd truly envisioned. Early one evening, Jeremiah found Annalise by the corrals, brushing a weary mare. The sky glowed with fading sunset. He stood there a moment, uneasy. I need to speak to you. She paused, heart fluttering. Yes, he exhaled. You asked me once if Fletcher's deception was partly my doing. I've told you some of it, but not all. I let him stay because I was lonely. Yes, but also because I had guilt. His gaze dropped. During the war, I was wounded far from my regiment. My brother Augustus died trying to reach me. I always blamed myself. If I hadn't needed rescue, maybe he'd have lived. So when Fletcher showed up wearing my brother's name, I saw a chance at redemption. It was selfish. I let him keep lying, telling myself it was for good. Annalise's eyes filled with sympathy. That's not selfish, Jeremiah. You were grieving. You wanted to believe you had family again. He shook his head, voice trembling. But it caused more harm, especially to you, coming here under false promises, losing your illusions. And had he left unprotected if Fletcher died? He swallowed. I'm sorry. Gently, Annalise placed a hand on his arm. We've all carried regrets. Fletcher's deception brought me here, yes, but it also let me see beyond illusions. And I choose to stay. This place, this family we're forming, means more to me than any orchard dream. His eyes shone with gratitude. Then, thank you. He glanced at Hattie, playing in the yard with a wooden doll Lyndon carved. She's brought out something in me I thought was gone, hope. Maybe I can be a father figure, or at least an uncle who cares. Annalise smiled, tears threatening. You already are. A few more peaceful weeks slipped by. and the ranch thrived modestly. Hattie and Lyndon repaired the bunkhouse roof. Jeremiah purchased a small brood of chicks from a traveling merchant. Annalise taught Hattie simple handwriting on a slate, hoping the child might eventually find written words if not spoken ones. One golden afternoon, the four of them sat on the porch shelling peas. The mood was light. Hattie tapped Annalise's arm and drew a large heart shape on her slate, placing a smaller shape inside it. She pointed at the cameo, then at Jeremiah. Annalise's chest swelled with affection. She's saying they share one heart family. Words were not needed. They laughed at Lyndon's teasing about how the old ranch is looking better than I've seen it. Sunlight draped everything in a gentle glow. A family moment, serene, unguarded. Suddenly, the peaceful hush shattered. A rider galloped up the road, dust swirling. Lyndon rose, hand on the old rifle, leaning by the porch rail. Jeremiah stood quickly, stepping in front of Hattie. Annalise's pulse kicked into high gear. The rider slowed Leander Wolcott. His presence radiated dangerous confidence. He wore a mocking smile as if unconcerned that four sets of eyes glared at him. Evening, he drawled. I gave you time to change your mind. You still have the girl, I see. Jeremiah's voice emerged rough. You've no claim on her. She's my niece. We have proof, and the law's aware of your threats. Wolcott barely glanced at the cameo. She's my property. His eyes flicked to Hattie, whose face went pale. I came to settle this once and for all. Annalise fought a wave of panic, stepping forward. You think you can just take her? The sheriff in Tucson knows all about you. He'll come if we send word. A flash of annoyance crossed Wolcott's features, but he kept his composure. Do you think the law can get here in time if I decide to burn your ranch first? Or if I take her away quietly while you sleep? His voice dripped menace. I've done worse in the war. No one raised a fuss. Lyndon bristled, aiming the rifle. Don't come closer. But Wolcott didn't advance. Instead, he placed his hand on his chest in faux sympathy. No need for violence. I've a proposition. You want to keep the child, pay me for her. Enough money for me to disappear. Then the ranch can enjoy its illusions, and I won't come back. A collective hush. Jeremiah's face twisted with fury. That's extortion. Kidnapping. Wolcott shrugged. Call it what you like. You pay, I leave you be. Annalise's mind raced. They had little money, barely enough to sustain the ranch. We can't bribe you. That's not justice. Wolcott's grin widened, baring teeth. Justice. A pretty word. Here in the frontier, there's only who can outlast who. Jeremiah drew a shaky breath, stepping onto the porch step so he stood eye level with Wolcott. We're not paying you a cent. We'll fight you in any way we must, but we won't let you take her. She's family, and you lost any right the day you abandoned her mother. Wolcott's eyes flickered with something akin to genuine hatred. Fine, Ward. Then you'd best watch your shadows. With that, he spun his horse around in a swirl of dust, galloping away. No shots fired, but the threat hung like a storm cloud. Annalise clutched Hattie, who trembled violently. The child's silent fear stabbed at her heart. She stroked Hattie's hair, voice steady. It's all right. We won't let him near you. Jeremiah's face was ashen. He exhaled slowly, every muscle trembling. Lyndon lowered the rifle, cursing under his breath. What do we do now? That man could strike any time. Jeremiah turned gaze fierce. We send for the sheriff. Today. He's threatened arson, kidnapping. That's enough for an arrest. He looked to Annalise. Take a horse ride to Tucson with the evidence. Lyndon, you go with her. I'll stay here with Hattie. Annalise's heart hammered. Jeremiah, you'd be alone. Wolcott could come tonight. He shook his head. If we all go, the ranch is defenseless. This is our home. I won't run. Besides, if the sheriff rides out, I can hold Wolcott at bay until help arrives. She saw the resolve in his eyes. He's willing to fight if it comes to that, but the plan made sense. She and Lyndon could travel faster without Hattie returning hopefully in 2 days with a posse. Annalise's stomach knotted, fearing for Jeremiah's safety. Still, there was no better option. Hattie sensed the tension clinging to Jeremiah's sleeve. He held her gently. You'll stay with me, sweet girl. We'll keep the ranch safe. Annalise swallowed her dread and placed a hand on Jeremiah's shoulder. We'll be back as soon as we can. Please, be careful. That very afternoon, Annalise and Lyndon set off on the fastest horses. They carried Fletcher's journal and the cameo's inscription. Dust devils swirled on the horizon as they thundered away from the ranch. The journey pressed them to ride well past sunset camping, briefly under the stars. Annalise hardly slept, picturing Wolcott creeping upon Jeremiah and Hattie. She prayed the man wouldn't strike so soon. The next morning they rose before dawn, galloping the final stretch into Tucson. Upon arrival, they found the sheriff's office. Sheriff Glass eyed them warily. Back so soon, Annalise's words poured out in a rush, describing Wolcott's direct threat. The sheriff's expression hardened. He's gone too far now, attempted extortion and intimidation. That's enough to form a posse. He nodded to his deputy. Gather 4 men, horses, supplies. We ride at once. Relief and terror warred within Annalise. We have help, but is it too late? Meanwhile, dusk settled over Red Moon Ranch. Jeremiah stood guard on the porch, rifle at his side. Hattie hovered inside the doorway, eyes wide. They had barricaded some windows, locked the barn, and prepared the best they could. The night deepened. Coyotes howled in the distance. Any rustle could be Wolcott, but hours passed with no sign of an intruder. Finally, Hattie dozed on the sofa. Jeremiah paced mind on Annalise's safety. He felt the cameo around Hattie's neck was like a beacon to her rightful place, her rightful father's memory. I won't let Wolcott stain that. Close to midnight, he heard it hoofbeats muffled. He froze. The hoofbeats circled behind the barn. A low voice commanded, check the door. Jeremiah's heart thumped. He eased to the window, saw 2 figures dismounting. Not just Wolcott, but an accomplice. They're trying to sneak in. He heard the barn door rattle. He raised the rifle, but the angle was poor. He didn't want to start a firefight if Hattie might be caught in the crossfire. A voice hissed, we'll set the place ablaze if we must. Smoke 'em out. Jeremiah's stomach twisted. He means to burn us alive if we don't hand over Hattie. He turned, scooped Hattie into his arms. The child awoke, panic in her eyes. Shh, he whispered, adrenaline surging. We can't stay here. The house would be a trap if they started a fire. He had to get her to safety, but where he remembered the old cellar near the stable, small, half-buried. They could hide there until help arrived. He hurried out the back door, Hattie clinging silently to him, cameo glinting. The darkness pressed in as he crept behind the bunkhouse. Keep your footsteps quiet. In the yard, he glimpsed a flicker of flame near the barn's side. Wolcott was indeed setting straw alight. Come on, Jeremiah breathed, opening the cellar's creaky door. He ushered Hattie inside. It was dank and cramped, but it offered some cover. She trembled, tears on her cheeks. Jeremiah knelt, hugging her close, the rifle across his knees. God, let the sheriff come soon. Smoke curled over the barn roof. A faint glow lit the night sky. Jeremiah's heart pounded. He couldn't let the entire barn burn. Their livestock would perish, the ranch would be ruined. He ruffled Hattie's hair. Stay here. Lock the door from inside. Do not come out. Her eyes widened, but he gently placed the latch in her small hand, guiding her to bolt it after him. Then he slipped out, closing the door behind. He heard the latch slide. Good. She was safe for the moment. Skirting around the bunkhouse, Jeremiah spotted the fire. It crackled, climbing a wall of the barn. Wolcott and his accomplice stood nearby, oil lamp in hand. Ward Wolcott shouted, You'd better come out or watch your precious ranch burn. Jeremiah stepped forward, rifle lowered but ready. Stop this madness. The sheriff's on his way. Wolcott sneered, tossing a flaming wad of cloth at another patch of straw. He's not here now, is he? Where's the child? Jeremiah swallowed the dryness in his throat. Gone. Taken away from here. It wasn't entirely false, she was hidden at least. Wolcott's accomplice stiffened. Boss, we keep this up, the whole place goes. So be it. Wolcott turned a predatory grin on Jeremiah. Last chance. You pay me or hand over the child. I walk away. Jeremiah's chest constricted. No bullets, no open fight. He recalled Annalise's vow to avoid violence as a final resolution. He raised his voice, letting desperation ring out. We have your crimes documented, Wolcott. Wartime desertions, murders, threats. If you kill me or burn this ranch, you won't escape. The law will track you across every territory. There's a price on your head, official or not. Wolcott snorted. I've slipped the law before. You can't intimidate me. Jeremiah forced calm. What about your accomplice? Does he know you murdered men who got in your way? That you blackmailed deserters? The sheriff is already informed. If he stands with you, he'll hang with you. The second man paled, glancing nervously at Wolcott. Boss, is that true? Wolcott snarled. Don't listen to him. He's bluffing. But a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. The barn fire spread, casting an ominous glow. Embers swirled in the wind, and frightened neighs came from the corral. Jeremiah squared his shoulders. Look around. This ranch, these people will never yield to you. You'll gain nothing. If you want to keep running, ride out now. The child is gone. You failed. Smoke billowed overhead. For one agonizing moment, Jeremiah feared Wolcott would shoot in rage. Instead, the man spat on the ground. You think you've beaten me? Fine. Rot here in your worthless land. But don't think I won't hunt that girl if I hear she's around. Then with an angry shove, Wolcott kicked a flaming beam away from the barn. His accomplice flinched at the crackling fire. Wolcott whirled to his horse, calling out, Come on, let's go. The accomplice hesitated, then followed with a panicked glance at the flames and Jeremiah's poised rifle. They mounted and fled into the night. Jeremiah took a shuddering breath, eyes stinging from smoke. They're leaving. For the moment at least, he prayed they were truly gone. He rushed to the barn to stomp out the smaller flames, yanking a bucket from the well pump. Embers singed his hands, but adrenaline drove him on. He managed to douse the worst, choking on black smoke. The fire smoldered, mostly contained, though the barn side was badly scorched. He sank to his knees, coughing. Still alive. The ranch still stands. A distant drum of hooves alerted him, multiple riders approaching. At first, fear spiked Wolcott, returning. Then through the smoky haze, he saw a flicker of a lantern. Jeremiah, Jeremiah, Annalise's voice urgent. Into the yard rode Annalise Linden and Sheriff Glass with 2 deputies. Annalise leapt from her horse, fear etched on her face, running to Jeremiah. He coughed, staggering upright. She grabbed his arms. Are you all right? Where's Hattie? He pointed to the cellar. She's safe. Wolcott set the barn on fire. He left just moments ago. Glass and the deputies dismounted, scanning for enemies. Which way? Jeremiah coughed, pointing north. He's heading that direction. Glass barked at a deputy. Come on, we'll track him. The 2 men rode off into the smoky darkness. The second deputy stayed behind to help check the barn for hot spots. Annalise hurried to the cellar, hammered on the door. Hattie, it's us. You can open it now. A tense second, then the bolt slid back. The door creaked. Hattie peered out, eyes red and teary. Annalise lifted her into a fierce embrace. Jeremiah came up, hugging them both. The child trembled uncontrollably, cameo glinting against her chest. We're safe, Annalise whispered. He's gone. Hattie's mouth opened, working soundlessly. Tears tracked down her cheeks. Suddenly she gasped, forcing out a ragged whisper. Me. All 3 froze, hearts pounding. Jeremiah stared at the child. Hattie. She tried again, voice hoarse and faint, but unmistakable. Me. Then Liss. Barely audible, but it was speech. Annalise felt tears flood her eyes. She cradled Hattie's face, voice trembling. You can speak. The child's lips quivered as if straining to recall how words formed. She nodded, tears shining. An unspoken dam had finally burst. Jeremiah gathered Hattie against him, weeping silently. Linden hovered nearby, speechless at the sudden miracle. A child's voice lost to trauma found in this moment of relief. Even in the swirling chaos, fire's ember glow, the sheriff's partial pursuit, a hush of awe settled over them. Hattie had found her voice, a sign that healing had begun. By dawn, the deputies returned. Wolcott and his accomplice had evaded capture. Sheriff Glass scowled. We lost them in the rocky gullies. They might be gone for good or lying low. Annalise felt a pang of disappointment. She wanted Wolcott arrested, but she also felt a wash of relief that he hadn't doubled back to do further harm. Sheriff Glass studied the burned barn siding. I'll file a formal report on the arson attempt. With that, plus the threats, Wolcott's a wanted man in this territory. If he shows his face again, any lawman can arrest him. And if rumors hold, he'll think twice about returning. Jeremiah nodded, shoulders sagging. Thank you, Sheriff. We'll stay vigilant. As the lawman prepared to depart, Glass tipped his hat to Hattie with a gentle smile. I hear you spoke a word or 2. Good for you, little lady. Hattie pressed close to Annalise, shy, but no longer mute. A flicker of pride shone in her eyes. Then she whispered, to thank you so softly, Annalise almost didn't catch it. Glass's eyes lit with warmth. He and his deputies rode off, leaving a swirl of dust in their wake. Lyndon surveyed the charred barn. "We'll repair it," he said quietly. "We always do." Annalise reached for Jeremiah's hand. "We do." Jeremiah gently touched Hattie's cameo. "He may come back one day," he said softly, addressing them all, "but she's not alone. We have the sheriff's backing and we'll protect her." Annalise squeezed his fingers. Together. Hattie's eyes brimmed with gratitude, glancing from Jeremiah to Annalise, then to Lyndon. Her newly freed voice struggled out another whisper. "Fa. Me. Lie." The word was unsteady, but it was there. Jeremiah's eyes misted. Annalise nearly broke into sobs of relief and joy. Hattie recognized them as her home. In the following weeks, they poured heart and soul into rebuilding. The barn's charred beams were replaced and the burned patch repainted. Neighbors from distant ranches, hearing about the attempted arson, sent supplies or helped in labor. Step by step, Red Moon Ranch rose from near ruin. Hattie's voice came slowly, words stumbling shy. But each day she tested more. Annalise she would say carefully or Jeremy. She liked to call Lyndon Lynn, giggling at how short it was. She wasn't ready for full sentences, but the door was open. Her silent fear no longer held her. One balmy evening, they gathered for supper at a battered table on the porch. Hattie ate stew with gusto. Lyndon regaled them with a humorous story of how a goat had escaped the pen earlier. Jeremiah chuckled, the lines of worry on his face softened. Annalise leaned back, inhaling the sweet scent of the garden's blooming desert flowers. This was the orchard of hearts Fletcher had dreamt, a place of quiet perseverance, shaped by truth and belonging. Afterward, Jeremiah asked Hattie to come with him for a moment. She followed him to the main house's small parlor. Annalise and Lyndon hung back, curiosity piqued. Through the doorway, they saw Jeremiah kneel in front of the child cameo in his hand. He gently clasped it behind her neck again. She'd taken it off to help with washing dishes. Hattie, Jeremiah said, voice thick with emotion, "I want you to know this ranch, this name is as much yours as mine. You're a ward. I don't care what Wolcott said, you belong here. And we'll protect you with everything we have, always." Hattie blinked tears, then, in a small, determined voice, responded, "Thank you, Unclee." The last word was shaky but distinct. Jeremiah pressed his forehead to hers, letting silent tears fall. Annalise's own eyes filled, witnessing the closeness. One final evening, the desert wind carried a milder touch. Annalise strolled with Jeremiah along the property line, the horizon painted in golden rose. Hattie stayed with Lyndon, contently practicing chalk letters. They paused near a patch of land where Jeremiah planned to try planting fruit trees, an experimental orchard in memory of Fletcher's illusions. He gazed over it, a mixture of hope and realism in his eyes. "I don't know if apple trees can thrive here, but maybe desert apricots or hardy peach varieties, something that can root in tough soil." Annalise smiled softly. "Sometimes even in the harshest desert, life surprises us." She thought of Hattie's bravery, the cameo's secret, Fletcher's final gift. "We plant seeds, not sure if they'll grow. But we do it anyway." Jeremiah turned to her, eyes reflecting the dusk's gentle light. "What about you, Annalise? Will you stay and see if these seeds grow?" She exhaled, gazing at the worn ranch house, the corral, the bunkhouse that was beginning to feel like a genuine home. She recalled arriving by train, clutching illusions in a letter. All that changed so drastically, yet she'd found a deeper truth here. "Yes," she said, voice steady, "I'll stay. This is where I belong, where I choose to be." His hand brushed hers, tentative but warm. She let her fingers intertwine with his. For a moment, the hush of the sunset enveloped them. No more illusions, no more stolen identities, just two people forging a future, determined to stand by a child who found her voice in the midst of chaos. "Tomorrow," Jeremiah said softly, "we'll water the orchard patch, see if we can coax life from the soil." He glanced at her, a small smile tugging his lips. "You've already coaxed life from my heart, Annalise, and from Hattie's as well." She felt tears threaten. Instead of words, she just leaned against him, letting the gentle hush speak for her. Sometimes there is no grand ending with triumphant horns, just the slow bloom of trust and belonging. Behind them in the twilight, the silhouette of Red Moon Ranch stood strong, A place once battered by secrets, now lit by the promise of a family's devotion. And if a desert orchard could grow from unyielding ground, then so could they. Together.